The morning erupted in a shocking scene. Anastasia's fiancé, Dmitri, transformed from a loving partner into a controlling figure. He snatched her phone, concealed her car keys, and declared, quote, "zero." Anastasia was stunned. A crucial work presentation loomed, yet he demanded she become a domestic servant for a surprise family visit. Greetings, dear listeners. It's a pleasure to welcome you to my channel. I have a fascinating new story for you. Enjoy. Anastasia stepped out of the shower, glancing at the clock. It was 8 a.m. on a Saturday, and a monumental day lay ahead. At 11 a.m. precisely, she was slated to deliver a presentation on a new project to a panel of investors. 3 months of relentless work, rehearsing until her voice was raw, had led to this very moment. The outcome would determine whether she secured a $15 million contract or faced professional ruin and dismissal. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured her coffee. Dmitri was still asleep. They had been dating for 6 months, and for the past 2, he had practically moved into her one-bedroom apartment on Vykovskaya Street. Anastasia, an analyst at an investment firm, earned a comfortable salary, approximately $200,000. Dmitri, a sales manager at a car dealership, earned less but carried himself as if he were her sole provider. This pretense intensified after he proposed 3 weeks prior. The ring was modest, yet Anastasia rejoiced. At 31, she yearned to finally build a family and have a child. Dmitri appeared dependable. He didn't drink excessively, held a steady job, and was attentive. However, recently, he'd begun asserting an almost proprietary control over her apartment, rearranging furniture, discarding cosmetics he disliked, and criticizing her cooking. "Wake up," she softly called, peeking into the bedroom. "I need to leave soon." Dmitri cracked open an eye, yawning. "Where are you off to, Dim?" she prompted. "I told you, the presentation. I have to leave by 10 to 9 to make it by 11. He sat up, stretching. "Oh, right. Listen, my mother wants to meet you today. She's bringing my sister. They'll be here around 10. Anastasia froze, her coffee cup suspended in mid-air. "Dima, what are you talking about? Seriously? I have a presentation. I can't possibly host them right now." "Why not?" he frowned. "My mother specifically made time. She's a very busy woman, you know." "Dima, I've been preparing for 3 months. My career depends on this." Career, he mimicked, standing up. "And family. A mother meeting her future daughter-in-law. That's important. Postpone your presentation." "I can't possibly postpone it. Investors from Moscow and St. Petersburg are gathering." Dmitri approached her, and Anastasia suddenly felt his towering frame looming over her. Previously, his height had seemed protective. Now, it felt threatening. "All right, listen," he said, his voice level. "You'll call them, say you're feeling unwell, and then you'll cook something decent. Fry some cutlets, make some potatoes, have a proper meal laid out, understand? My mother needs to see you're a homemaker." Anastasia took a step back. "Are you out of your mind?" He advanced, snatching her phone from her hand. "Give that back, Dima." She tried to retrieve it, but he raised it high, tucking it into the pocket of his sweatpants. "Dmitri, return it immediately." "I'll return it when everything's done. Until then, stay home and have everything ready by 10. Anastasia rushed to the entryway, grabbed her bag, and searched for her car keys. They were always on the shelf by the mirror. Now the shelf was bare. "Where are the keys?" Her voice trembled with a mixture of fury and terror. Dmitri emerged into the hallway, arms crossed. He was a head taller, broad-shouldered, and he was using that advantage to its full extent. "You're not going anywhere. My mother and sister are arriving in an hour. Get busy frying those cutlets," he barked, making Anastasia flinch. She stood in the entryway of her own apartment, clad in a bathrobe, without her phone or keys, unable to comprehend the situation. "Dmitri, you're destroying my life right now," she whispered. "That's my job, my career, my contract, and this is my mother," he retorted. "And if you want to be my wife, you need to understand priorities. My mother is sacred." Anastasia slowly sank to the floor, her back against the wall. She recalled Dimitri's remark 2 weeks ago, suggesting she could quit working altogether after the wedding. She had brushed it off with a joke about who would pay the mortgage. He had grumbled something unintelligible. She also remembered his insistence that she transfer ownership of the apartment to joint property beforehand, as a sign of trust. She had refused, and now she understood she had made the right decision. Dimitri urged. Anastasia slowly stood. Her mind raced. But no coherent plan emerged. The presentation would begin without her. Her colleague, Victor, would present the project. He had been eyeing her position for a while. The investors would deem her unreliable. The contract would be lost, her career in ruins. She walked into the kitchen. Dimitri flopped onto the sofa, turning on the television. A kilogram of minced meat lay in the freezer, kept there for emergencies. Anastasia took it out and placed it in the microwave to defrost. Her hands moved automatically. She cautiously approached Dimitri, attempting to retrieve her phone. He caught her hand, gripping her wrist. Quote 26, she gasped. He released her, his gaze hardening. Quote 27. Anastasia returned to the kitchen. The clock read 9 a.m. 2 hours remained until the presentation. It would take at least 40 minutes to drive there. She wouldn't make it. Tears welled in her throat, but she swallowed them down. She needed to think. She didn't have a spare phone. He had undoubtedly hidden the car keys, too. She could go down to the neighbors and ask to use their phone, but Dimitri wouldn't let her leave. She could scream, call the police, but what would she say? Her fiancé hid her phone. It wasn't assault, not a threat to her life. By the time the police intervened, the day would be over. The minced meat had thawed. Anastasia mechanically added an egg, soaked bread, salt, and pepper. She formed the first cutlet, then the second. Her hands trembled. Dimitri shouted from the living room. She didn't reply, placing a frying pan on the stove and pouring in oil. The cutlets hissed. It was 10 minutes to 10. Anastasia flipped the cutlets. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she wiped them with the back of her hand and continued cooking. Exactly at 10 a.m., the doorbell rang. Dimitri jumped up, a smile spreading across his face. "Here's Mom. Open up, come on." Anastasia glanced at herself. A worn-out bathrobe, disheveled hair, a tear-streaked face. The kitchen was a mess, splattered with grease. "Nastya, why are you standing there? Open it." Dimitri went to the door himself and flung it open. "Mom, Sveta, come in." A large woman in her 50s, wearing an expensive sheepskin coat, bustled into the apartment, followed by a slender girl in a puffer jacket, laughing. Both were rosy-cheeked from the cold, cheerful. The mother opened her mouth to speak, but froze on the threshold. Her gaze fell upon Anastasia by the stove, spatula in hand, in a disheveled bathrobe, her eyes red. Then she looked at the scattered groceries, dirty dishes, and finally at Dimitri, looking pleased in his loungewear. The woman slowly shifted her gaze back to Anastasia, her face contorted. "Dimka," she said, her voice strange. "What is this?" "This is Nastya, Mom, my fiancé," Dimitri announced cheerfully. "Nastya, why are you like this? At least change your clothes." But her mother was staring at him, as if seeing him for the first time. "Dimka," she repeated, her voice hardening. "Explain to me why she's dressed like this, why the kitchen is a mess, why she's crying." Dimitri looked flustered. "Well, she was cooking for you. I asked her to." "You asked her?" The mother strode into the apartment, discarding her coat on the floor. "Or ordered her. Mom, I don't understand. We had an agreement. Where is her phone?" Dimitri paled. "What phone?" "Dmitry Olegovich, where is this young lady's phone?" "I have it. I just took it temporarily. She wanted to leave, and we have an important meeting." The mother advanced on her son and delivered a slap that made Anastasia flinch. The sharp crack echoed through the apartment. "What are you doing, you animal?" she roared. "You took the girl's phone, hid her keys, forced her to cook." "Mom, what are you doing?" Dimitri clutched his cheek. "I wanted to..." "To what? Make it better? You're holding her hostage. Sveta, call the police." "Mom, no police," the sister wailed. "It's too embarrassing." The mother turned to Anastasia. "My dear, please forgive him. I didn't raise him like this. Here." She snatched the phone from her son's pocket and offered it to Anastasia. Anastasia took it with trembling hands, disbelieving. Quote 52. The mother turned back to her son. Quote 53. Dmitri, dumbfounded, rummaged in a drawer and produced the keys. The mother grabbed them and placed them in Anastasia's hand. "Where did you need to go?" "To the presentation," Anastasia stammered. "An important one." "All right, go quickly, change, and get there. You still have time." Anastasia glanced at the clock. It was 10:15. If she dressed quickly and drove without traffic, she might just make it by 11. She bolted for her room, ripped off her bathrobe, pulled on jeans and a sweater, grabbed her blazer, cosmetics, hastily packing documents and her laptop into her bag. She dashed to the hallway. Her mother stood with arms crossed in front of her son, who sat on the sofa looking like a whipped dog. Her sister huddled against the wall. "Thank you," Anastasia breathed. "Good luck, dear, and please don't have any further dealings with my son. He's not for you. He's not ready for anyone until he matures." Anastasia nodded, rushed out the door, and flew down the stairs. She burst into the office at 11:05. The presentation had already begun. Victor was enthusiastically addressing the investors. Anastasia entered the room apologetically, took the reins, and seized the initiative. Victor shot her a venomous glare but shifted aside. She spoke, presented her slides, answered questions, working on autopilot yet with precision. Her professionalism prevailed. At 12:30, the lead investor nodded. "You've convinced us we're ready to sign the contract." Anastasia could barely contain her tears. Returning home that evening, Dmitri was gone. His belongings had vanished. A note lay on the table. "You disgraced me in front of my mother. We are no longer together." Anastasia crumpled the paper, tossed it away, sat on the sofa, buried her face in her hands, and for the first time all day allowed herself to sob. From relief, exhaustion, and anger at herself. How could she have been so wrong? Her phone beeped. A message from an unknown number. Dmitri's mother, Lydia Anatolyevna, had saved her number while Anastasia was dressing. "Please forgive my son. He behaved like a complete fool. I had a serious talk with him. If you need anything, please write." Anastasia replied, "Thank you so much. You saved me and my career. I simply couldn't stand by and watch my son become a tyrant. His father was like that. I suffered with him for 20 years. I don't want anyone else to go through this. Take care." Anastasia sat for a long time, phone in hand. Then she stood and walked around the apartment. Everything was in its place. Her apartment, her life, her freedom. The next day, Dmitri texted, "Let's talk. I was out of line." She blocked his number. The contract was signed a week later with a bonus of $300,000. Anastasia was promoted to senior analyst. A month later, Lydia Anatolyevna called. "How are you?" "Fine, thank you. Everything is excellent." "I was thinking," she began hesitantly. "Forgive me if I'm overstepping, but I have an acquaintance, a good man, a widower, 40 years old, an architect. Would you like to meet him?" Anastasia smiled faintly. "You know, I think I'll hold off on my personal life for now." "I understand. Well, if anything, just let me know." They corresponded occasionally. Lydia Anatolyevna mentioned that Dmitri was dating some 20-year-old student and was already trying to move in with her. Anastasia just shook her head. 6 months passed. Anastasia was invited to a company corporate event at a lavish restaurant. She arrived in a new dress with a fresh haircut, looking confident and serene. Colleagues congratulated her on her success. The contract had brought new clients and renowned the company. In the midst of the evening, someone touched her elbow. Anastasia turned. It was Dmitri. He looked unwell, gaunt, wearing a wrinkled shirt with dark circles under his eyes. "Nastya, hi. What are you doing here?" "Working as a waiter," he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. "I was fired from the car dealership." She stared at him silently. "I wanted to apologize," he continued. "About that day, I was wrong." "You were," she agreed. "Maybe we could meet? Talk?" Anastasia picked up a champagne glass from a nearby tray that he was holding. "No, Dmitri, we won't meet." She turned and walked back to her colleagues. Dmitri remained standing with the tray, looking bewildered and pathetic. At the end of the evening, a man in his 40s approached Anastasia. He was tall, with a pleasant face, wearing glasses. He turned out to be the architect Lydia Anatolyevna had mentioned. He was a guest of one of the partners. They fell into conversation. He was interesting, intelligent, and had a sense of humor. Anastasia realized that for the first time in 6 months, she was genuinely enjoying talking to a man. They exchanged numbers. As she left the restaurant, Anastasia glanced back. Dmitri stood by the service entrance, smoking, hunched over. He looked at her, and there was a look of longing in his eyes. Anastasia turned away and stepped out into the light snowfall. She walked towards her car, a smile playing on her lips. That same apartment from which she had almost been held captive 6 months ago was once again her sanctuary. That same job which had nearly been ruined now brought her joy and financial security. And she herself, who had almost broken, now knew her own worth.